A little about the Pennsylvania Coalition of Public Charter Schools. We're founded in 2005 and we represent charter schools throughout the Keystone State. We are the state's largest and most active charter organization. We advocate for both brick and mortar and cyber charter schools. Our work spans across the state, including regional training events, school tours, legislative engagement, and media relations. To support our mission, the Pennsylvania Coalition of Public Charter Schools advocates for reform minded charter school laws, promotes the public charter school movement, fosters communication among its members to ensure that best practices and up to date information is shared among our schools and their staffs. We support and assist members in the development of their professional managerial skills and in the advancement of public charter schools. And we establish working relationships with other education reform organizations, professional organizations, and government agencies seeking to improve the quantity and quality of education choices for parents. A few facts about the coalition and this Pennsylvania Charter School Program grant. The coalition was awarded $30 million for the Charter Schools Program grant to state entities over the period of the 5 years 2021 to 2025, with two overriding outcomes: increase the number of high quality charter schools that educate substantial at-risk student populations and improve student outcomes in PA charter schools, particularly for at-risk students. 90% of the funds are to be used for the development, expansion, and replication of high quality brick and mortar charter schools in PA. 3% of the funds for administrative activities, and 7% of the funds for technical assistance. Everyone that has attended today's webinar will receive a PDF of this presentation, which will have hyperlinks so that you can look at the different uh, documents that are being cited. So the CSP grants to state entities program awards, you can click there and you can see the award as it was given to the coalition. Now, yes, I mentioned earlier that the coalition supports brick and mortar as well as cyber charter schools. However, this is a federal grant, and during the legislation, each and every year, it is solely for brick and mortar charter schools. So to be eligible, you must be a brick and mortar charter school. You must have an approved charter from a Pennsylvania authorizer. The coalition and the PACSP grant cannot fund schools that are in the charter application process. You do not have to join the coalition in order to apply. However, we would love for you to join. And you must conform to the federal ESSA definitions of a charter school, which we have linked here. And then we developed an eligibility guide, which you can also access through the link to find out more. The award structure is a maximum award size for all subgrantees of $1.5 million. And the grant is conditional based on meeting certain criteria over the years, year 1, 2, and 3. The base award is $900,000, 20% of which is allocated upon the preliminary notice of the grant, the remainder upon finalized subgrant contract. Now, in addition to that $900,000 base award, a school that is either located in a qualified opportunity zone, also known in our state as Keystone Opportunity Zones, or draws at least 40% of its student population from neighboring qualified opportunity zones, will receive an allocation of an additional $200,000. That's going to be handled by a verified enrollment count in subgrant year one for that school. Now, if at least 60% of a school's students are economically disadvantaged at the enrollment count in subgrant year one, an additional $200,000 will be allocated. And to achieve the third installment or allocation of $200,000, a school must educate at least 150 economically disadvantaged students in their CSP funded grades. It's really important to understand the use of funds. These funds are made available on a reimbursement basis. Ultimately, the school has spent the money and then submits the appropriate documentation to receive reimbursement. These expenses must be for allowable cost, and they will be reviewed at the very least quarterly, and in many cases monthly. Specific documentation is necessary for the reimbursement of cost. We have an allowable cost guide already posted on our grant website, and their link is also available through this presentation PDF. What are considered allowable uses? Preparing teachers, school leaders, and specialized instructional support personnel. Acquiring supplies, training, equipment, including technology and educational materials, including developing and acquiring instructional materials. Carrying out necessary renovations to ensure that a new school building complies with applicable statutes and regulations, and minor facilities repairs, but not construction. Construction is excluded. Also, providing one-time start-up cost associated with providing transportation to students to and from the charter school. As mentioned earlier, these allowable costs are further explained in the allowable cost guide. So we are in year 5 of applications. The application window opened on June 2nd, and it will close on July 14 at 11:59 p.m. The applications must be submitted via the online portal. Identify someone within your organization to be the point person and have them sign up at the portal and create a profile. Download, complete, and upload the letter of intent, and complete application part 1 and 2 by following the prompts within the portal. When you begin the application process, be on the lookout for further communication from the PACSP grant team related to your application, whether it may be a question of the letter of intent or a question regarding making sure all of your items are included in your application. And speaking of all of the items, here is a list of the components that will support your application process. The grant request for application document in itself spells out many of the details related to the application process. Now, that has been posted on the website from the time of the window opening, and we're having this presentation to assist in answering any questions. In addition to that, there will be a budget webinar on Friday, which you have also seen links to register for that on the website. Also, the blank letter of intent, the school zone map, the enrollment summary, the allowable cost guide, a blank school project budget spreadsheet, as well as a sample school project budget, an application narrative rubric, a project specific narrative rubric, and a competitive preference priority plan rubric, as well as a track record rubric. It is very important to review the application narrative rubric as well as the project specific narrative rubric. It is essential to make sure that you are identifying which standard you are responding to when you are doing your application. You may even want to create a heading for each time you are addressing a standard. This assists the review team as they consider your application for an award. By reviewing the application narrative rubrics, as well as the project specific narrative rubric and the competitive preference priority plan rubric, you will have insight into what is most important. So please be clear, this is not a grant application where you submit an application that you submitted for some other grant. There are very specific standards that are being sought out in the review of this award. What is most conducive to communicating why your school should receive the grant is to delineate the different standards and explain how your school meets those standards or is working towards those standards, or, especially in the case of a new school, will work towards those standards. As mentioned earlier, we will be, the website is already available for you to schedule a one-on-one session so that we can provide any other technical assistance on applying for the grant. When you get into the RFA, the request for application document, you'll see pages 3 through 15 provide key information about the PACSP program for prospective applicants. Pages 15 through 17 provide information on the review, award, and submission process. Pages 17 through 18 outline the application instructions. Pages 19 through 26 will provide budget instructions. And pages 29 through 42 are more specifically outline the required components of the application package. We go into as much detail as possible within these pages, and still we encourage you to schedule a one-on-one info session. So let's talk about the review, award, and submission process. There will be a peer review team who reviews your application, comprised of a successful charter school founder, an expert in charter school business management and finance, a representative from Pennsylvania Institution of Higher Education, and an attorney experienced in PA education law. We work diligently to avoid any conflict of interest. Anyone on the peer review team must disclose any potential conflict of interest during the application process, and alternates are appointed. And then, before they actually review an application assigned to them, they must once again disclose conflict of interest in the event that we may have to then reassign them or pull them from the review process given the nature of what we may find out. The scoring criteria, please note that there is a track record for expansion and replication schools. So if a school has less than 3 years of operation, they are a new school. Now, new school and development applicants complete 3 narrative sections. That is the school model, the project-specific narrative, and the competitive preference priorities. They become the weight of how your school is evaluated. The school model takes up 50% of the weighting of your final score, whereas the project-specific narratives and the competitive preference narratives each 25%. Now, if you are a school that is expanding or replicating and you have a track record, that becomes 35% of the weight of your score. You will, of course, still be evaluated for your school model. That is equal to the weighting of your track record. And then the project-specific narrative and the competitive preference priorities share the remaining 30%, taking on 15% each. Award eligibility. We intend to fund 18 new replicating and expanding schools over this 5-year grant cycle. Now, so far, we have awarded the grant to 13 schools. In this grant year, we are looking to award it to 5 schools. The chart that you see before you is from our original grant application. What I want to highlight for you is our awarding structure, and then we will circle back to that chart. Every applicant must earn at least 75% of all available points. So it does not matter what category your school is in. If you have not scored above 75%, then you will not be considered for the grant. Please know that if you are in a specific category that does have many applicants and you are scoring above 75, but you're not in the top scoring within that category, you might not receive the grant. Because the highest scoring applicant per each award type may be selected. And then if no applicant in an award type has scored above 75%, then the next highest scoring applicant of the entire applicant pool may be selected. So what has occurred for us in the actual implementation of this grant is that there was a year, if not 2, where replicating schools did not apply. Now, that automatically left an opening for another school. And when we reviewed the entire applicant pool, an expansion school had scored above 75 and was the highest scoring in the entire pool. So we have awarded a number of expansion grants. To date, we have already awarded 6. Please keep in mind That does not mean that another expansion school will not will that another expansion school cannot have access to this grant. I want to emphasize that first and foremost, a school all on its own must score higher than 75%, regardless of what category they are in. Now, within a category, the top scoring schools will be selected. In the case of year 5, we are still seeking replication schools. We are still seeking new schools. And we will allow for expansion schools if we find that the scoring has determined that that school should be considered for the grant. So we encourage all schools in every category to apply. When we go to the review process, we will review what has been submitted to us with the Department of Education to determine the category breakout. I hope that that helps everyone understand how we will select the schools in year 5. And we will have Q&A at the close of this as well. The award process and start date. Applicants and their authorizers will receive notification on the status of their application via email by Monday, August 25th of 2025. And you may be wondering, well, the application deadline is July 14th. Why are they not notifying anyone before Monday, August 25th? We must do a thorough review of all applications. And when we do select those schools, we must make sure that we can stand behind the schools that are selected. Successful subgrantees will be required to participate in a CSP subgrant post-award webinar, which will be held in September. Once conditions of a CSP subgrant award are met, the applicant will receive an email stating the subgrantee has final approval. Funds should not be spent or encumbered until the grant has received final approval, unless otherwise directed in writing. So what that means is you must be doing what you must do for your school, understanding that this is a reimbursement-driven grant. The money that you were going to spend to take care of something because that's what is needed in order to achieve your goals is what is necessary to be done. In the review process, post-award webinar, we will finalize what allowable costs are for your school. When we finalize what those allowable costs are, we are also going to review and approve your CSP budget. Once all of that occurs, you will receive confirmation that what you had planned to do with the funds are what can be reimbursed. Please keep in mind that this is a reimbursement-driven grant. And we'll talk more about that in the budget webinar on Friday. The PACSP team is mindful that schools awarded may require differing planning periods. PACSP can only fund up to 18 months of planning based upon when the students will be starting at the new charter school expansion or replication. Please see an example below for further details. So, if School A is opening, expanding, or replicating with new students starting fall of 2025, and School B is opening, expanding, or replicating with new students starting fall of 2026, both schools will begin their first program year on October 1 of 2025. School A will go directly into their implementation period, while School B will begin their planning period. Each school will be provided a 90-day look back for eligible expenses prior to October 1, 2025. So ultimately, there is a period of July, August, and September, where those expenses can also be considered for reimbursement. However, the actual grant year begins in October, and the reimbursement processes begin in October. So please be mindful of that as you work through your budgets for the budget portion of your application. And as stated earlier, there is a webinar on the budget process that takes place this Friday, June 6th at 10 a.m. So the submission process and deadline. You may only submit one application using the PACSP grant online portal. That's why it's so important to have a point person who will make sure that everything goes properly. The application deadline is Monday, July 14, 2025 at 11:59 p.m. The application submitted late or incomplete will not be considered. We recommend that you submit your application and upload supporting documentation several days before the deadline to ensure it is received and complete. The only component that is mailed, everything else gets submitted via the online portal. And that is the certifications and assurances. And that must be postmarked via mail by Monday, July 14, 2025 to Vertex Education. Attention, PACSP Grant, 222 North Keswick Avenue, Glenside, PA, 19038. A few things to note about the application itself. All pages must be standard letter size, 8.5 by 11. All narrative responses use an 11-point font in Calibri or Times New Roman fonts, double line spacing, 1-inch margins, and the tables may be in 11-point font. Number all of your pages. And do keep in mind that you will be uploading a PDF. So if you are including hyperlinks that will give a peer reviewer more detail, you must make sure that when you create that PDF, it's done in such a way that the hyperlinks are working. That's very important. Um, That's very, very important. If you say that there was a video, or you say that there was a news story, or if you want to show an article, if you have a hyperlink, make sure that in the PDF that you're uploading that it is working. There are page limits. We are very appreciative of our peer reviewers who receive uh, a, a very small honorarium, and we want to make sure that we pay pay heed to some of our page limits. The executive summary should be 1 page, double spaced. The application narrative, 30 pages, double spaced. The project specific narrative, 2 pages, double spaced. The competitive preference priority plan, 2 pages, double spaced. The track record expansions and replications only will be doing track records. Those are 10 pages, double spaced. And the budget narrative are 3 pages, double spaced. Now, please keep in mind the double spacing is for ease of reading as as well. So it's not a scenario where you want to do less than double spacing. The whole idea is that you want your peer reviewer to be able to comfortably read your application. So always keep that in mind. And then the school budget spreadsheet, that you do not PDF. You send that in a Microsoft Excel macro format. And you'll see more detail regarding that in the budget webinar that's going to take place on June 6th at 10 a.m. That's this Friday. Completed applications will include a completed letter of intent that must be submitted via the online portal in order to complete your application. The following documents must be completed, submitted via the online portal by Monday, July 14, 2025 at 11:59 p.m. The cover sheet and enrollment information, the authorizer notification or proof of authorizer notification, the executive summary, the application narrative, the project specific narrative and required attachments, the competitive preference priority plan, the budget narrative, the school project budget template, the required attachments, and the certifications and assurances, which you will also postmark no later than Monday, July 14th. Additional documents are required for replication or expansion schools, and details can be found on page 40, and items must be uploaded to the online portal. Just a quick overview of the budget instructions, and then we will go into greater detail on Friday. An applicant may use up to 18 months of the grant award for planning activities. That means prior to students entering the classroom. And in the case of an expansion school, that would be prior to that grade beginning or prior to the additional students being admitted. So as we gave earlier in that example, if there is a scenario where students begin automatically in October of the grant year, then that is when the implementation phase begins. So each year's budget must not exceed the total award shown in the table. 1.1 million in year one, 200,000 in year two, and 200,000 in year three. And as we broke out that conditions for receiving those allocations, you'll see the details on how that is determined. And if you have any questions, please feel free to email us or schedule the info session one-on-one. And once again, register for the budget webinar on Friday, June 6th at 10 a.m. Please note that you are going to be using an Excel spreadsheet. Very important. This is not Google Sheets or any other spreadsheet format. It is an Excel spreadsheet that has macros embedded in it. After downloading the Excel, enable macros if your computer doesn't automatically do it for you. There will be 3 tabs. The first and third are reference tools for you, the applicant, and the second tab is the actual detailed worksheet, which you will fill out. We'll go into more detail on Friday and show you what actually happens when you enter information into that spreadsheet. So tab 1 has definitions. It outlines the 12 expenditure categories. Tab 2 is where you actually input your plans. And tab 3 summarizes everything for you through calculation. And more guidance can be found in your request for application booklet. The budget narrative, please do not exceed 3 pages double spaced. The purpose of the budget narrative is to assist grant reviewers in understanding how your budget supports your grant application. There should be a clear connection between the objectives identified in your grant application and the grant request. You must clearly explain that all expenditures are allowable, reasonable, and allocable, and they are adequate to support the activities of the project and directly connect to the goals and objectives in the proposal narrative. It is important that the budget and narrative demonstrate how the school will maintain financial stability after the end of the subgrant period. The justification of how and or why a line item in the budget summary helps to meet the program deliverables is also essential. And you must discuss all years of funding that align to the CSP grant budget. And I am going to stop sharing now to allow for questions. And if you can use the raised hand feature, that will help us know that there's a question.
Send.
And we will also be having the info sessions one-on-one. So if you prefer to wait until then, that's fine. I don't see anyone raising.
Can I ask a question?
Oh, okay.
I couldn't. I looked for the race and I couldn't find it. I'm
Oh,
sorry.
it's under React. Okay, it's okay.
Okay.
But that's
Just to clarify, you explained a number of schools will be awarded in each category. I just want to clarify the number you were there for expansion school for year 5 was 2, but you also said 6 already awarded. So I just want to clarify, by default, will there be 2 expansion schools? Are you guys seeking for 2 expansion schools to award the grant for this school year, for this year?
we are seeking for every school to score above 75.
I understand.
And we will be discussing with the Department of Education how we will create the categories. We have to receive approval from them to add anything other than the original application plan. But because of certain categories not applying earlier and then expansions filling that gap, we ended up with already 6 expansion schools. And they are very clear that we stand behind our desire to see high quality seats added to our charter schools. So we're not going to have any hindrances on schools applying. Every school will apply. And then when we receive all of the applications, and we will not know who is applying until July 15th, when everyone has applied. And we will not know who scores above 75% until every school has been reviewed. So we'll be working very closely with the Department of Education in terms of what school, what category.
Okay. The last question I have, uh, I just want to be sure. Uh, you stated for the implementation year for expansion schools, the students enrolled October of that year. You know, since we are applying, for example, for this year, and the new students will be starting at the end of August when the school is opening, that it's not a problem, right? It's not, they don't need to start in October.
Right. Yeah. No, that October means that the grant fiscal year.
Okay.
The grant fiscal year has nothing to do with the school calendar. It has everything to do with the standards that are set up by federal grants. So that's October 1 through September 30th. And we also, keeping in mind that we are talking about schools, that's why we allow for a 90-day look back so that you have your you have your
July
July,
1st.
August, and September expenses that can also be sought for reimbursement.
Thank you.
You're
Thank you very
welcome.
much.
I see Michelle Jones had her hand up.
Hi, good morning, everyone. Ms. Watts, I just wanted to say that you did an excellent job presenting, and I definitely will be on the budget call this Friday. I did see the link for that. And I enjoyed that you mentioned on this meeting that this is a reimbursement driven grant. So therefore, obviously, our budgets need to accommodate the expenses beforehand. So I just wanted to say excellent job. So I didn't really have a question. I had more of a comment.
Oh, well,
Mhm.
thank you so much.
You're welcome.
And Ellen Somakawa.
Hi, thank you so much. So I'm trying to do some math about this 18-month implementation period, and I mean the planning and then implementation. Um, and so in order for us to expand, we need to build a new building. So is there a date by which we must have students in seats in order to qualify for this grant? Like our building will probably be ready in May of 2027 for us to move in, but the start will be fall of 2027. Does that mean that we are outside of this grant period? The construction time is just going to take a little bit longer.
That's an excellent question. Um, the implementation phase allowed, I'm sorry, the planning phase allowed is up to 18 months. And then you must be in implementation mode. So, implementation mode means that those children are in seats receiving instruction. So, that's the best way to gauge whether or not um, this would be the right grant at the right time. So, if children are going to be sitting in a classroom receiving instruction end of August in 2026, then this would be the time to be in planning mode for those students. If the students will not be enrolled or in their seats until 2027, this would not be the type of grant. Now, let's keep in mind, if you are an expanding school and you are admitting your expanded enrollment, if you're starting that process and they're sitting in seats, that's very different than them sitting in another building. If you are enrolling students as part of your expansion plan and they're sitting in your current building, but you are that these students, you are clear that these students are part of your expansion plan. They are counted towards your expansion, and that is the start time of your implementation phase. Does that help explain?
Yeah, got it. Thanks.
Mhm. I do not see any other hands. And as mentioned, we will be emailing you the PowerPoint, and it will also have a link for an info session, which I believe the link is also available on the website. So once again, first of all, before you go, we must thank you for all that you do. Let's be very clear. This is a webinar about a grant that the coalition has been very fortunate to provide to a limited number of schools. The coalition provides services to all charters. And so we want to make sure that you recognize that we recognize you for the great work that you're doing within the state of Pennsylvania. And for those of you who are planning to do a new school, we applaud you, because those of you who already have a school, you know that it is a major commitment, it's a major decision. So we want to thank each and every one of you for the tremendous work and commitment that you make each day to your students and your families. And we thank you for your interest in the PACSP grant. Take care and have a wonderful day.
Thank you.
Bye bye.